Hello and welcome to another Tenderloin Museum online event. My name is Katie Connery and I'm the Executive Director of the Tenderloin Museum. We are currently open Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 5. Yay! Yeah, we would love to see you there soon. Walking tours every Saturday at 1. And we're very excited to be hosting this event this evening. Margo St. James is a true San Francisco legend and Tenderloin hero. And tonight we are going to be celebrating her life and sharing her incredible legacy. And we're thrilled to be partnering with St. James Infirmary and sex worker rights advocates Carol Lee and Carol Queen. They are going to teach us more about Margo's extensive legacy, and then we're going to hear a few love letters to Margo that were part of St. James Infirmary's event that celebrated Margo's life. And then we're going to hear about the services and resources available through St. James Infirmary from Celestina Pearl and activist Cesar Espinoza. And he will share about ongoing efforts to decriminalize sex work in California. So I want to say a big thank you to Celestina, Cesar, Bambi Turner, Felicity Azura, and Alex Photo from the Tenderloin Museum for all their help in putting this event together. And without further ado, I'd like to turn things over to Celestina Pearl, who is going to lead us through a land acknowledgement.
Hello, welcome. You'll see just my photo for a moment while you can still hear me though, right?
Yep.
Okay, good. Hello and welcome. My name is Celestina and my ancestors are Mexican, Arapaho, Cherokee, and European. I am currently located in Yelamu, also known as San Francisco, on the unceded territories of Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, as are many of you. Take the time to find out more about this land and the original stewards, the Ramaytush Ohlone, or the indigenous history of the land you are currently on. Let us honor, support, and give gratitude to the original peoples of this land and to the land itself. Here in the San Francisco Bay Area, please consider giving to the Sagareyate Land Trust, which is a land trust set up by indigenous elders, particularly matriarchs of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, as well as the San Francisco Friendship House, a great native community resource. Thank you so much. Aho.
Celestina, that was awesome. Thank you so much. This is Carol Queen and Carol Lee, the other Carol. Is it cool that I go first? Right on, right on. And then we're doing it this way. We are doing it this way because I too wrote a love letter to Margo, and I want to share that with you to sort of kick us into the other ones that we will hear later. But one of the things that I did with that love letter is hopefully put a fair amount of introduction to Margo into it. And I know that there may be some people joining us who haven't done a deep dive into Margo's history. So we're going to try to catch you up on Margo between Carol and me in our first few minutes with you tonight. So, dear Margo, I am sending you so much love and gratitude. The world I occupy and the life I've lived would have been so different without you and the other fierce and fabulous activists you've inspired. In fact, this life might have been impossible before I knew a single thing about what sex work was really about, before the term sex work was even invented by Carol Lee, our friend who is here with us tonight. I heard about COYOTE, Call Off Your Old Tired Ethics, the organization that Margo founded. I don't remember the context anymore. Lots of water under the bridge since 1972, but perhaps it was in the alternative newspapers I used to devour when I had a chance to buy them. Like you, I was once a weird kid in the rural Pacific Northwest. Though you had already headed out to San Francisco to be an artist by the time I was born in 1957. I think you must have lived the life I fantasized about once I got old enough to get my hands on beat poetry and all those San Francisco scenes in the alt papers. I dreamed of running away from home, lighting out for Frisco before I knew we weren't supposed to call it that. And what if I had? Maybe I'd have found you. As you piled up the kindling left by the sexual revolution, lit a fire, created COYOTE, and changed San Francisco and the world forever. COYOTE was the organization that Margo created to support and advocate for prostitutes. I didn't run away to Baghdad by the Bay then, though. I waited, stepped into activism in a smaller pond, organizing queer youth once I went away to college in Eugene. And it was HIV/AIDS that finally brought me home to San Francisco. And when I got here, at last, you were gone, living in France with Gail Federson, building a global movement for sex workers' dignity and rights. I started to meet people who knew you. And at last, the fateful day came when I needed a gig to pay my rent. My friend Samantha introduced me to her madam, and I stepped into the world of in-call and out-call, one of the most educational periods of my entire life, and that is saying a lot. And I don't just mean I learned how to put on makeup in a moving taxi. I had a Cinderella tour in sex work, decent money, enough to pay the rent when I worked on my degree in sexology and started to publish my writing. Mostly nice guys, a few total sweethearts, and nothing terrible, even with the exceptions. I was already good with my safer sex skills, and I am proud that safer sex in San Francisco included the voices and experience of sex workers. Prostitution allowed me to blossom as an activist, a writer, and a public intellectual. And the San Francisco you influenced was the perfect place to be as I came into my own. I remember one thing I want to tell you about, a brunch with a half dozen other call girls where we started talking about skydiving. One of us had a trip booked the next day. I was the only one of those women who had never been or was about to go skydiving or whitewater rafting. I was the only one who had no intention of doing those things. And what are the odds? Sex work is diverse and complex. I always remind people that they need to understand this. It is not simple, nor is it experienced by the providers in only one way. But I don't think I ever thought seriously before that gathering about the way it can be not just a high wire act, but an adventure, not just a way to pay the rent, but a platform to go big, talk back, sail through sexuality like we had just jumped out into thin air. And I think to the degree that we can do that safely, we owe you our thanks. I still don't want to jump out of a plane, but I used my given name when I was in the business because I learned from you and those that you influenced to take pride in this life. I finally got to work with you a little when you came back to San Francisco. I missed the over-the-top 1970s hookers balls. Robert, my partner, remembers a pimp who laid an endless line of cocaine up the stairs into the venue. But the ones in the 90s were still fabulous. And it was the biggest honor to co-host the Streetwise TV show with you as we had conversations with sex workers and sex-positive folks. And on the side, we were reintroducing San Francisco to almost their next supervisor because Margo ran for supervisor and she came within a few votes of winning. Wouldn't that have been a thing? I will always regret that I didn't know you better, miss all the stories I never got to hear directly from you, but so glad that I am part of an activist community that knew, loved, and worked with you before I showed up. And I can hear so many of your stories from them. Each one of us and the work we do to scrub the stigma from sex and sex work is a tribute to you, Margo, every last one of us. Inspired by your singular, shining example, your incisive mind, your boundless energy and charisma, you changed the world and so many individual worlds. You are in my heart always. Big love from Carol Queen. And just to add a little bit of a coda to that before I hand it right over to Carol Lee, I showed up at the time when Carol Lee was holding this community that had been built in the decade and a half prior. And knowing her first, even before I met Margo St. James herself, was another one of the biggest honors of my life. I'm so happy. I'm so happy to share a part of a name with you, Carol, and a community with you, and all the work you did and continue to do. Because if people who are with us don't know that the sex workers' rights movement is huge, vast, mighty, global, and taking things on that have stigmatized all of us, all the sexy people, pretty much all the women, all the clients, so many of us, that work is ongoing, and I think we would welcome your support. So, Carolee, what do you want to add?
I just have to reach out to you too. A lot of people think we're the same person. They're sure, and that's okay. I love being one person with you. I mean, I just love it that I feel like you are a part of me. I don't know. I really need to say that, because all the things that you do are, I mean, the ways you contribute to the community and keep us afloat. It's just, sometimes there are things that seem too hard to me. And I'm just like, oh, but Carol Queen does it. And, I'm just like, I mean, I am Carol Queen too. So that's what I say. Okay.
I could not be happier to be, inseparable twins from you. And actually one time I got to go to Japan to do a gig that they invited you to do. You sent me instead. That was awesome. Long may we roll.
I love it. Okay, well, thank you so much. And it's an honor to be here. And thank you for the Tenderloin Museum, of course, the St. James Infirmary. And so we'll talk to you about knowing Margo. And I've been working with the Margo St. James Tribute Collective, who put together a group of many older whores, and younger ones, and new activists too, who put together this video tribute, and you'll be seeing clips from that. And Bambi did, and she's was the editor, so we're super excited. But I was very happy to be part of that. Margo died on my birthday, and it was spooky. I've talked to other people who had close people die on their birthdays too. And I mean, of course, she was a guiding light for me. And, I started doing sex work in my late 20s, and right after I moved here. And the first thing I did was, of course, go to a COYOTE meeting, right? I mean, I think I looked it up in Plexus. Y'all remember Plexus? Google it. And I looked up the meetings, and there was a COYOTE was going to be at the women's building to talk about whatever policy, Priscilla Alexander, and I went with a paper bag on my head. This paper bag symbolizes the anonymity prostitutes are forced to adopt. Margo wasn't there, but of course I just, I was like a fangirl. I followed Priscilla to the next meeting and got to witness Margo, and I was very intimidated by her, because she had this very disarming, down-to-earth quality, and obviously a lot of knowledge about all kinds of politics. And she laughed effusively, and she was very warm and really surrounded by people who loved her. And I see in organizing the tribute, so many people come forth and talk about how she showed up in court for them, how she supported their case, how she made such a difference in their lives by helping them find what they wanted to do and to focus on. So Margo is an extremely generous person, and around her, the people who participated in bringing this memorial together so many of them were benefactors, and part of their lives they lived as benefactors. So, well, I did know a bit about Margo before I moved here, because my mother was an avid feminist, and she invited Margo to Long Island to a NOW meeting to speak about prostitution. And this was before I was a prostitute or anything. I was a feminist, she was a feminist. And so she talked about Margo, and, I mean, I thought that sounded like a great idea. So, in those early days, I think that was where I really first learned about, or started understanding and living by, intersectional kinds of approaches to sex worker politics. And I feel like in the sex worker movement, a lot of our early insights were quite advanced, because we are at the intersections of poverty and various kinds of freedom for some people, and expression, and so many discriminations. And that intersection creates kind of a fertile kind of, well, is it a petri dish? No, that's not very nice, but it's a fertile ground for growing ideas. And so Margo was very clear always that the movement needed to be organized with regard and focus on people who were most impacted by the criminalization. And her focus was on the criminalization. She had, as I said, she had attended trials when someone would be arrested when she could do something. As a matter of fact, that's how she met Gloria Lockett of CalPEP, that began, that launched an HIV prevention project, one of, or perhaps the first HIV harm reduction based project for sex workers, and expanded out. It still exists, and it's expanded out to reach people of color and Black people specifically in Oakland and at various times throughout the Bay Area. So her contribution was felt, and of course is still felt on a daily basis by so many people, of course, many more than are just remembering how she added to their lives. And I know Margo's whole kind of group in those early days were artists. People would be sleeping on the couch all the time. Oh, she would never she let everybody stay, and it was always pot. And that brings me to the point that, she's a Renaissance woman. So I am portraying her also a bit as a hippie, and she was surrounded by hippies, and a leftist. It wasn't that she wasn't really kind of a fierce leftist, but she was a leftist in those days. Artist, she was a painter, as we understand. But she was also one of the best pot growers in California, so I've heard. That's what, these are okay things to say. I found out. Oh, she was a detective, of course. I think we know that. She was, she went to law school. She was, I was trying to say this in a way, in terms of reproductive rights, she was kind of a doula. So that was something that in those early days, I mean, abortion was illegal. So she certainly gave the best support to women in those contexts, and that meant a lot to people. So, I mean, her whole life was about gaining skills and spreading the knowledge, and that's what her life focused on. But also, when I look at the details, she was a strategist, and I know she was a partner and friend, either a lover or just a friend with fabulous lesbian activists, Carol Stewart, Gail Peterson. These were in the days when it was still kind of a risk to come out. She, well, it's not always lesbian, just like basically whores too, and everyone. Robin Few was another of her partners, and just from a distance, I should say, Robin was, but she was supportive of Robin, and she gave us so much, I think, because of this kind of magic Renaissance character. And I know that, she was a marathon runner. I didn't explain that, but I think that when we look back at Margo, she understanding where that Renaissance power comes from and how that in many ways does reflect whore consciousness, if I could be a little essentialist about it. I want people to know that. And the last thing I want to say just how beautiful it was to be in the kind of glory of the way Margo shared and be with her old friends and organizing this project, and how much we got from each other. And we Zoomed everything, and we have little notes on everything, and we have, and there was so much community, and it was just beautiful to have that in the sex worker movement. And I hope to be able to bring it forth with everyone else to offer to young sex workers and point to good directions. So thank you so much.
Carol, yes. And the one thing that I want to add to what you said about Margo and her history is that, this is sort of the origin story of Margo as a sex worker activist that led her to becoming a private eye and going to law school and all the things, was that she ran a lovely household in North Beach when she got to San Francisco, where people came and went and the artists were there, and it was beats edging into it wasn't the summer of love yet, but it was the early 60s, and she got busted for prostitution. And she said to the judge, "Your Honor, I've never turned a trick in my life." And the judge said, "If you know that language, you're definitely guilty. No, a nice girl wouldn't know that nomenclature about turning tricks." And so she eventually got off, but it was via this deep dive into, well, what is the criminal justice system doing, screwing with us like this when we're trying to live our lives, and we've got a sexual revolution to put on here. What are you all doing? So Margo probably planted some seeds for the sexuality that has blossomed in San Francisco in more ways than just the sex workers' rights movement, right? She is one of the great San Franciscans of all time. And knowing her makes me feel more in touch with this amazing city than I would feel if I hadn't known her, to be honest. And speaking of the younger people coming up now, working in the Tribute Collective with the Old Prose Project and the artists and activists who have sort of connected with them, they were the ones who hosted Margo's memorial. You can still look it up on the interwebs. You can go to margostjames.com and see the whole thing. A lot of friends of Margo, a lot of people influenced by her, and a lot of clips of Margo herself. And we're going to show you a little bit of that tonight as well. We've got footage from George Cicere's short documentary Hookers, featuring Margo as a strategist, a thinker, a philosopher. You will see an intense, charismatic, and smart as fuck side of Margo in this video, right? And Molly and Kayla talk about how Margo and her work has influenced their lives. And of course, Gloria Lockett, who you just mentioned, Carol, of CalPEP, is gonna bring up this set of videos that Bambi put together with the Old Prose Project to help us sort of see into that side of the work and Gloria's relationship with Margo. So Alex, if you want to pop up and show them, or just start showing videos or whatever you're going to do, Alex, right on. Alex, I think we need some sound.
Let's try this.
As long as our sexuality is considered a commodity, we're going to be forced to trade on the only thing that we've got, our bodies. And to be put in jail for it is a total violation of our civil rights. And the way they, it's not per se against the law to be a prostitute. It's not a federal offense, but the state statutes all deal with a crime of words, the solicitation, the wrong three little words. Instead of I love you, it's where's the money, honey? And then you go to the pen. If you take it, if the green cup is your pawn. That's what's got to be stopped, because the illegality of it allows unscrupulous men like the owners of these parlors, like corrupt police people, the whore lawyers, the bondsmen who are parasites from the get down, to rip us off. And the judges who are hardened and calloused and sit there and say, we won't let you out in your own recognizance. You're obviously employed. You pay everybody. And the public defenders who say, we can't take your case. It's soliciting. And obviously you're employed if you can do that. What does that do? Especially to the first offender, a person who may not even have been soliciting, but out there entrapped by vice officers who don't work like stereotypes, who think that any woman alone at night walking around is a prostitute out there to make money. That's the crime, making money, our own money. And that's financial independence is freedom. And they don't want women to be free. They hold us to jail, lock us up, and we're only one person. Are we screwing ourselves out there? Obviously not. Everybody knows it takes two. Customers remained invisible up until now. I think it's time to bring the lights on, take it out from under the rug, take it out from under the table, and talk about it, and see what really is going on there.
I was seeing David Wills, and we went over to the COYOTE office because I was helping him paste up COYOTE House.
Was that in the city or was that?
Yeah, it was at Pier 40.
Yeah, that's actually in the city.
And I was amazed. It was like meeting a suffragette or something. It's like, I couldn't believe that this woman was putting it upon herself to try to decriminalize prostitution. I couldn't believe it. And so I just thought she was so brave, and I just decided that any spare time I had, I would devote to her. But one of the fun things about Pier 40 was hanging out, sunbathing on the roof there. We would all go and hang out, just take off your clothes and just lay there. And sometimes Margo didn't even bother getting dressed. She'd go back down to the office and we'd have like meetings, and people would be like, when they really, I remember one time she got mad about something somebody said, and she just was pounding on her desk, and she gets up and flails her arms, and whoever was in the room was like, ah!
Oh, I know a funny story.
Yeah.
I have he's a judge, and rather conservative. So he came over one day and took me to lunch, and I said, would you like to meet Margo St. James? He said, yeah, I'd love to. So I said, fine, she's right over here on the island. So we go over the island, and Margo, of course, walks out stark naked, and he's a little put aback, but he's trying to be cool, doesn't say anything. And Margo comes over and shakes his hand, puts her arm around him, and you could tell he was a little, a little put back. And she said, hey, I got an idea, let's smoke some dope. So she goes and gets some dope. Now, here's a judge who is very straight with a naked woman smoking dope. He said, I think we'd better go. I met Margo in 1960 at San Quentin Prison. We were both there protesting the execution of Carol Chessman. And one year it was her birthday. And I told her, I said, Margo, there are some people coming from Europe to interview you for a magazine. So get all dressed up and fluffed up. And, you look nice, I'll take pictures. Meanwhile, we were having a surprise birthday party. And I said, come on, let's get out here on the deck after she got all fluffed up. And we'll wait for them. And when we got out on the deck, the cars started driving up and around. And as the cars were driving around, there were 20 cars. There must have been 50, 60 people, all singing happy birthday to you. And I said, happy birthday, Margo. Margo turns to me and she looks at me. She said, does this mean I'm not going to be interviewed? Typical Margo.
The last time I saw her, I danced with her.
Yeah.
Am Gloria Lockett, prostitute / sex worker, ex-co-director of COYOTE, ex-executive director of CalPET, retired from CalPET after serving my people for 35 years. I met Margo St. James in 1978. I was working with a group of women and a man. We had been working together for about 10 years. We got busted mainly because we were all working together and they thought we were controlled by this one man. I had been seeing Margo on TV from time to time, and she was the only person that I ever heard say positive things about prostitutes, sex workers. After we got busted, I contacted Margo and said, this isn't right, it was bias and sexist, and they're trying to send the black people to jail and the white girls, they wanted them to testify against us, which they didn't. Margo understood it from the beginning, and she went to court with us, she supported us, she supported him. Really, I think she saved my life. Start working with Margo St. James and start doing calls, start doing, rap groups and going to the strolls, talking to women on the stroll. It wasn't about us telling them what they couldn't do and what they shouldn't do, but how to do with their work safely. Margo was always friendly, always eating, always talking, feeding everybody. She loved wearing a hat. I remember her laughter, how she got along with everybody, how she opened her house. We did the horse conference at her house in Mills Valley. It was like an international conference, so there was people that came from all over. I think like 4 or 5 people stayed there the whole time the conference. And the conference was like 3-4 days, and out of the conference came the name CalPET, which was California Prostitute Education Project. Margo St. James and Priscilla Alexander, they helped write the first grant. And with that first grant, we got a $30,000 grant to do outreach for sex workers. She was always an advocate, always friendly, always supportive, and she was sex positive. She talked sex lots of times and played around with dildos and showed you different things like the handcuffs. At the end of my prostitution years, I got into domination, and it was so much fun talking to her and buying whips and going to different places like, oh God, what's it called? It's Good Vibrations. Showing me where Good Vibrations was and how to buy all these different toys that I had never heard of. All I heard of was condoms for years. It's been a long time since I saw her. I looked for her probably about 5 years ago. We wanted to give her an award. Make sure she understood how valuable she was to CalPET and is to CalPET. A friend of mine had seen something on the internet, and she called me and she said, did you know that Margo had passed? I was shocked. I thought she could live forever. It's like, how does that happen? I don't understand. I don't understand why some people have to pass, and she was one of them. I just, we will never forget Margo St. James. I had a picture in my office, a large picture of Margo St. James.
This one here. And this was always in my office over the years. And when I left, I brought my picture with me.
From Annie Sprinkle, prostitute, porn star turned artist / activist. It was in between massages that I got my hot little hands on the first issue of Margo St. James's newsletter, Coyote Howls. One of my whore coworkers had brought it to work and passed it around. In it, Margo St. James, the editor, argued that prostitution should be decriminalized. The year was 1975. I was 20 years old. I had been working in massage parlors for 2 years, and never once had I heard about anyone ever mentioning the idea of decriminalizing prostitution. It seemed like magical thinking. Spartacus Spa, which was located in Manhattan, regularly had stings. Arrests for prostitution were routine. We didn't deserve to be arrested or put in jail for offering pleasure, nor should our clients be punished for their sexual desires. When I heard Margo St. James was speaking at a meeting of a new group called PONY, which stands for Prostitutes of New York, the meeting was held in a homey apartment of feminist civil rights lawyer Florence Kennedy. About 25 women of diverse backgrounds were gathered. Prostitutes of various kinds. The term sex worker had not yet been invented. A few academics, some social workers, and some badass women. Call girl and writer Tracy Kwan was there, as well as Priscilla Alexander, who was from the National Task Force on Prostitution. When Margo spoke, it was cool, calm, low-key, and collected. But by the end of the meeting, we were all ready to rid the world of bad laws and relieve the stigmas of being a whore. Over the years, I went to every single Margo event I could. Margo's Hookers Balls were the one place where whores could be out, be proud, and celebrated. The Second World Whores Congress that Margo produced and co-led with her partner of 10 years, Gail Federson, was phenomenal. Held in 1986, during the height of the AIDS crisis. We whores were desperate to learn better how to navigate the epidemic, not get AIDS from our clients, and to get the message out there that whores were teaching safe sex, not spreading it. Margo and Gail managed to hold a congress at the best venue, the European Parliament in Brussels. Margo and Gail created an international network of whore communities. And by the end of the conference, a world charter for prostitutes' rights had been drafted and presented at a huge press conference. Whenever Margo called a press conference, the press came running like bears to honey. Even when confronted with controversy, Margo stayed cool and collected. She was our fearless leader, and she birthed so much of today's sex-positive culture. For the 3 years I got to hang out with Margo more intimately in the 90s. We were neighbors on Orcas Island in Washington State. I'll never forget the way she was there for me when I broke up with my partner, who got really angry, and I was afraid. I ran to Margo's house. She was my protector, a shield, and she let me stay with her for a few days until I got off the island safely. I will be eternally grateful for that. For over 4 decades now, Margo St. James's life and work inspired mine, and countless others. Sadly, we now must say goodbye. The old sex worker adage comes to mind. Good girls go to heaven, bad girls go everywhere. Margo is everywhere.
Celestina, I think we are handing it off to you.
Okay, that sounds great. So I have a letter that I wrote to Margo St. James. And here we go. Dear Margo St. James, we met many years ago at St. James Infirmary, and I want to reach out to you to tell you how you have impacted my life. I have been part of the St. James Infirmary community since about 2003. During that time, St. James has been my sanctuary, my lifesaver, my family, my healthcare, my mental health care, my workplace, and one of the proudest things I have been a part of in my life. And all these years knowing that you were the inspiration for all this has led to you being one of my heroes. I thank you so much for the work you did early on to further sex workers' rights, celebrate sex workers, and open the minds and hearts of many. When I was in nursing school, I found a very unwelcoming, trans, homophobic, very body negative and sex negative environment. St. James Infirmary was my sanctuary. The community gave me hope to get through it all. I knew that when I got through, I would have a place as a nurse in healthcare. I have worked in many healthcare environments since becoming a nurse, but none of them have been as welcoming as St. James. Since having my daughter 10 years ago, her and I both have been welcomed at parties and events. I feel like it has been a positive influence in her life that will benefit her for the rest of her life. She is a very smart, caring person, and I know that she will spread that throughout her world and throughout her life. I have had the honor of being St. James's outreach coordinator and realizing the longtime dream of having a mobile clinic. I got to be the one to purchase, design, and outfit the van, develop and implement a van outreach program, and I've been going out with 2 others for van outreach to do testing, hand out safer drug use supplies, and what we call HOPACs, special gift bags full of condoms, lube, mints, wipes, and flyers with our info and more for the sex workers on the street. We also have a shift each month to bring bags of supplies and resources to the dancers at the strip clubs. I love my work and I love my community. And I thank you so much for being a hero and inspiration for this work. Please know how much I and so many others appreciate you. Sincerely, Celestina Pearl. Hi. So I talked a little bit in the letter that I wrote to Margo about how her work affected me in my life, and a little bit about how that work was going with St. James Infirmary. But I want to tell you now a little more about St. James. So St. James Infirmary was founded in 1999. And like I said, I joined in about 2003, so it'd been going for a little while. And I'm just going to fast forward a little bit to say that we've moved a few times since we first started, which was in the city clinic, the San Francisco Department of Public Health Sexual Health Clinic. Sorry, someone just came in the door. And then we moved over to 10th and Mission. We moved over to the Tenderloin. Now we're in our second location in the Tenderloin. And since moving to the Tenderloin, our community services have grown by leaps and bounds. So like I mentioned, I got to be the one to purchase our mobile van unit. We're still going out in it. It's been 3.5 years now since then. And we've expanded to deliver groceries and all kinds of very needed supplies to sex workers in their homes. And I've been doing a lot of stuff like this, just sort of trying to spread the word about St. James Infirmary wherever I can. And we also have a whole mental health program with 3 mental health providers. We also have our harm reduction program. We have syringe access programs, Peer Navigator, Hep C program. We have a trans housing program where we have an actual physical house that has 3 floors of rooms for sex work, well, for trans folks, and then also a rental subsidy program for trans folks. And let me think, what else? We have several programs that happen in-house at our location in the Tenderloin. Monday nights we have programming at the Hope Center. Tuesday nights we have our needle exchange and offer all kinds of supplies. Tuesday nights at 730 Polk Street. Wednesday nights is our flagship clinic night. Offering clinical services as well as all kinds of supplies and support. Thursdays is our Mujeres Trans Latinas en Acción. So that is run by Lisette Sanchez. And we have a great community of trans Latinas and others that come to get supplies and just check in with community, to be with each other, check in on each other, get information, referrals, resources, and all that. At Friday nights, we have another needle exchange. And forgive me if I'm leaving anything out that I can't think of, but please check out St. James Infirmary. That's St. James Infirmary, infirmary.org. So check that out. And and we also have an online sex worker series, and that is on Eventbrite. It's called Dear Sex Workers, We Love You. We have all kinds of great online offerings. Check that out. And support sex workers and support sex workers. Oh yeah. Also we're doing advocacy work with along with Decrim Sex Work California. Thank you, Cesar. Cesar's putting some great links in the chat right now, so please check those out. So we're currently working on repealing loitering with intent to commit prostitution. So please support, contact your local legislators if you're in California. And if not, support local legislation that is working towards decriminalization of sex work and supporting sex workers. And also Cesar, who I mentioned, has been posting a bunch of links in the chat right now. Cesar and I work together in the Decrim Sex Work California group. And he's gonna talk a little bit more about the work that we're doing there. You ready for that, Cesar?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Celestina.
Great, thank you.
I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Great. So my name is Cesar Espinoza Perez. I'm a current sex worker and a community organizer. I am HIV positive, have been cured of Hep C. I'm an activist. After I was diagnosed with HIV is when I connected with St. James Infirmary through a nurse through the Options Project, which was doing HIV research. St. James Infirmary helped me, the existence of St. James Infirmary, and thank you, Margo, is helped me to wipe off the stigma that I had felt when I started doing sex work. It also helped me see, coming to the clinic and meeting the other participants and other people in my community, it helped me see that I was not alone, that I was part of a community. And I was unhoused, in San Francisco for several years. And I used to trade sex for a place to sleep. And last year when COVID, hit or started, I started doing some of the organizing work, and with Rad Mission Neighbors, and they're just some of the sweetest, kindest people that I know, most compassionate, and we collaborated. We created a mutual aid fund, and I put the links. Last I checked, we had raised over $15,000 that we've given out it through $100 grants, emergency grants to sex workers during COVID. And so if you want to keep supporting that work of mutual aid, I put the links to the Venmo or the Cash App that we accept donations via. One second here. So one of the other things I wanted to also just talk about with COVID is that one of the things I've been seeing on the ground is food insecurity and a need to have case management, like I think for really everyone, but especially sex workers. And right now, we're in this kind of a period where, I was actually watching the video from the last year that we did, and we had some of the similar concerns. Like there's this housing insecurity now, like in terms of like, are we going to be able to, continue to be living where we're living? It's so real. And we were feeling this last year, but it's still something that we're dealing with. And so I also wanted to make sure that like Carol Quinn was mentioning, there's a huge universe of like sex workers. We're all so diverse. We're all, and one of the things that I do want to say is that sometimes the immigrant sex worker voices are not heard because of like risks, from deportation or like not being able to get asylum, or it's just so many harms, so many barriers, and also language is one of the big issues too. It's like sometimes they may be resources, but if they're only offered in English, then it's hard to access. And then and I want to play an audio, but I will maybe just send the audio later because I don't feel comfortable translating it because I'm not that great at it, but I may send it later. But one of the things that is part of the audio is that immigrant sex workers have been left out. Like for example, for me, like I was able to apply for unemployment. I was able to apply and to get that kind of like COVID relief, but undocumented people aren't getting that sort of relief or help. And even people who've grown up here and are documented are still facing barriers just with the bureaucracy or how difficult it is just to still apply for unemployment, especially because of like the fraud and now EDDs being super difficult. So thank you, Celestina, for introducing the coalition. So yeah, it is a coalition that we've been part of now. I can't really say too much about it because I think when we have an event to launch the coalition, I feel like that we would say more about that. But what I can say is that we together had voted to work on a bill that would decriminalize loitering with the intent to do sex work. The bill is Senate Bill 357, and right now we've done a great. I'm so proud of the policy team. They've worked really hard. This has moved really fast, and we've passed the Senate. I'm happy to say that now we're doing this whole thing in legislative meetings in the Assembly, and that is where we are going to ask any of our supporters here. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. You can send in a letter of support as an individual. I think they prefer orgs, but individual power is still power. And so I put in this link. It's the CAA legislation.advocates. If you want to support us, please click on the link, create an account. That way you could, and then click on submit a letter, click I put the instructions in the chat. And then there's actually where it says select recipient, actually put assembly public safety. It's because we already passed the Senate, like I just mentioned, and so that is a correction I need to make. And then yeah, just under the stance, click support, and then it would be helpful for if you are part of an org to send like CC Manoush Candle, who's part of ACLU. That way we have an idea of, you can track who is our supporters. Let's see here. And I think that's about it, most of what I'm going to say here. Other ways you can get involved, if that is not like, how you want to get involved, is, just get involved with your local orgs that are doing either direct service or advocacy for sex workers, or just doing outreach, or even just hosting like something educational or a panel about sex work, and bringing sex workers. And I think that's all that I have. Thank you so much for listening. And I am going to let our facilitator welcome the next speaker.
That's our show for today. Thank you everyone so much for participating. I feel like I know Margo so much better already, and it was an honor to host this event. And are the Carols there? Hey.
Yes.
If anyone wanted to add in any final words, but other than that, we're gonna call it a night.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for doing this.
It was wonderful to gather with you all, and anyone who joined and didn't know Margo, I hope that we brought a little bit of her amazingness to you. And obviously, as you've heard from Celestina, from Cesar, from the folks from the Old Prose Project in Bambi who did so much great work, and the folks at the Tenderloin Museum too. I mean, generations down the road, we continue the work, right? And it's an honor to be part of a community where that's the case. It's diverse and it's sometimes difficult, and it's always amazing to gather together to try to change things this way. And may all of you who are touched by the desire to do that pitch in somewhere where you're needed, because we're all needed.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Good night,
Thank you so
everyone.
much, everyone.
Good night, Celestina. Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Good night,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye.
So lovely.